Okay, welcome to chapter 17, and in this chapter we're going to get the full set of passive endings and then also the deponents down here. Halfway in between normal verbs and deponents, there is also this word FIERÍ, which is a semi-deponent. Oh golly, that sounds awful, doesn't it? So before we start, we have to review what the symbols mean. I, you, he, she, it, we, y'all, they. And then, of course, you learned in chapter 15 that the active endings are O, S, T, mus, tis, enti. But now there's something weird here. What is this? Well, you should recognize the bottom row here. These are your passive endings. So O is I blank, or is I am blanked. S is you blank. Ris is you are blanked. T is he, she, it blanks. Tur is he, she, or it is blanked. Mus, we blank. Mur, we are blanked. Tis, y'all are blanked. Then I have no idea where mini came from, but that's y'all are blanked. And lastly, they blank, and unter, they are blanked. You'll notice 5 out of 6 have an R on them. And I don't know for a fact, I'm not an expert, but I'm suspect that the sign of the passive voice is a trill on this R. Romans were known to trill their R's all the time. Now the question is, how much did they do it? No one really knows, of course. But you can just kind of hear it in your ear. If someone's trilling their voice, then the sound onomatopoeically simulates reverse action, just like a passive. So I personally highly encourage you to trill these endings as a cue to your ear that these are passive endings. Or, eris, tur, mur, mini, and unter. Even mini can be sounded a little bit like a trill with the M and N working off of each other. Now you might wonder where these Latin endings came from. Well, remember, Latin was once a Gallic language. It was a dialect of Gaulish, which includes all these languages across Western Europe. So here you can see a similar set of endings in Irish. Or, ris, tur, mur, mini, inter, and or, ris, tur, mur, mini, inter. Of course, the vowels changed, but the consonants didn't. All right, here's the hard part of it, though. There are several kind of exceptions to that basic set of endings, and it varies by conjugation. So personally, I encourage you to just recite all these conjugations until you can do it automatically without thinking about these exceptions. But here I'm going to chart the exceptions just so that you note them and are exposed to them at least once. Okay, so in the active voice, here's where we had our macrons. The second person singular and then the first person and second person plural. However, when we get our passives, we're going to fill in the third person singular line here with macrons also. Because when you add a few letters after T, then suddenly the penult syllable can receive the stress accent. So the passive set of macrons look like this, much more orderly. By the way, in case you forgot that terminology, the last syllable is the ultima. The second to last is called the penult, or like our word in English, penultimate. And the third to last is called the antepenult, or antepenultimate. You'll get those later in chapter 21. Okay, what else? The third person plural gets its you, and that's perfectly normal. You're used to that because it's more natural to say a grunting you before a grunting nt than it is to say a flimsy little I before a grunting nt. So cadint became cadunt. Capiint became capiunt, and so on. Don't forget that the nothing verbs get an I nevertheless. They shouldn't be there. Same with the you down in the third plural. They shouldn't be there, but they are. And so there's your set of exceptions in the active voice. In the passive voice, there's those and one more. The one more is this one here. Second person singular gets an E distortion because it's easier to say eris with an E than iris with an I. So take note of that. Also, this purple box will sometimes have a passive ending ERE. You'll see that a little later too. But that's rare, and I don't use it in this course, but I'm just warning you. I mean, it looks almost like an infinitive. Huh, weird. All right. Once again, here are your macrons. Now the third singular is getting it. There is your U distortion. And once again, there are the vowels that shouldn't be there in the nothing verbs. Notice also that, just as happened in active voice, the passive ending swallows the A in long A verbs. So I suggest you just recite these: natur, nataris, natatur, natamar, natamani, natantur, habeor, haberis, habetur, habemor, habemini, habentur, cador, cadaris, catatur, cadimor, cadimini, caduntur, capior, caparis, capitur, capimor, capimini, capiuntur, venior, veniris, venitur, venimur, venimini, veniuntur. Yeah, those are slightly unnatural in the long I verbs. All right, expression. So in the active voice, it was just a simple hump in present tense. In the passive voice, now we have a trill. Dicaris, dicor, dicatur. And that's again a cue that what? That is passive, correct. Okay. And here is your optional second singular ending, which is rare and which I don't use. You won't see this ever again after this moment. Just warning you. All right, so recitation. Say it a first time. Vocor, vocaris, vocatur, vocamor, vocamini, vocantur. And say it a second time. Vocor, vocaris, vocatur, vocamor, vocamini, vocantur. And say it a third time without the stem. Vocor, vocaris, vocatur, vocamor, vocamini, vocantur. And a final time with nothing. And you say it yourself without me. Ready, go. Very good. Nice. Now for the drills. Which word is this? Vocor. Very good. What about this? Vocantur. Yes. And this? Vocamini. Good. And this? Vocatur. Very good. Here's your House of Latin way of doing it. You can use this format if you want. So what would this be? Vocatur. Nice. And here? Vocaris. Nice. And we? Vocamor. Right? Vocor. You can't even say vocaur, so don't say it. And what else? Vocantur. Nice. Great. Oh, yes. And last one. Vocamini. Excellent. All right, so sentence formation. So before we master passive sentences, I want you to master them in English first. So there are 3 requirements for passive voice in an English sentence. First off, we have a form of the verb to be, like is, was, am, will be, any of those. And here in this case, it's is. And then we get a past participle. Now, yeah, you had participles in chapter 14, so you should remember this a little bit. Remember what they are? Yeah, okay, adjective on the outside with verbal content in the center. But this one is past, and so which word do you think here is a past participle? Right, looked. Yeah, like the window was looked through. It's an adjective modifying the window. Looked. All right. And then the last thing you need for passive voice is optionally, it's not required, by plus an agent. So the king is looked at by mother. All right, so make a mental note of the 3 things that are necessary for passive voice. Be, blanked, and by blank. Okay, so now we need to practice transforming an active sentence in English into a passive one in English. So here's what you're going to do. First, you're going to take whatever the accusative is, the object, the direct object, and you're going to make it be the new subject. So mother looks at the king. Well, what's the object? Who's getting looked at? The king, right. So that he is going to be the new subject. So move it down there. The king. Now we need to flip the verb from active to passive. Looks at becomes what? Is looked at. Right. Those are the two out of the three necessary parts of passive voice. Is and blanked. Good. And then lastly, we'll put our former subject in as an ablative of personal agent. By mother. So mother looks at the king. The king is looked at by mother. Hopefully you got that. So if you haven't yet, download this PowerPoint from the link in the video description and try these exercises. So you start it and stop it somewhere. Try to get it in the middle. And then think to yourself, what would the passive form of the sentence be? And so y'all point at us. Well, remember your 3 steps. Us becomes the new subject, so it becomes we are pointed at by y'all. Show the answers, and yes, that's correct. All right, so stop the video and try these until you can do it without even thinking about it, and then start it again when you're ready to keep going. Okay, now that we're good with English, now we can start to get close to attacking Latin passive sentences. First, though, what I want us to do is redo the English exercises, but in Latin word order. So active voice would be mother, the king looks at. Now to make this passive, we're going to flip the 2 nouns just like we did last time, and then drop the verbs straight down, of course in its passive form now. So mother the king looks at now becomes the king by mother is looked at. So that's pretty simple, right? It's just a Latinate way of saying it. It almost sounds like Old English poetry or something. I don't know. All right, so stop the video and try these and try to turn them into English but with Latin word order. So the king you hates would be, hopefully you can do this, you by the king, what? Are hated, right. Now don't say were hated. That would be past tense. You got to keep the tense the same. So hates is present. You got to keep it present down here. Are hated, not were hated, not will be hated. All right, so stop the video and try these as many as you need to, and then start it when you're ready for step 3. All righty. Finally, we can transform a Latin sentence into passive voice. So we're going to use that same word order that we just used. Mother, the king looks at. Mater regem spectat. So what are we going to do first? Right, we're going to take this accusative and put it where? At the start of the new sentence as accusative? No, I'd hope you didn't say that. As a nominative, because it's the subject now. It's the new subject. So what would be the nominative of regem? Hopefully you remember rakes. Rakes. Now mater is going to become our ablative of personal agent. Rakes. Ab matre. And then we just have to flip our spectat to a passive. So can you remember what the passive ending of T is? Right, ter. So, rex ab matre spectator. The king by mother is looked at. Great. Congratulations! You have just made your first passive sentence in Latin. Give yourself a pat on the back and do a dance around your desk in the next 3 seconds. All right. Okay, so if you got that, then now we just need to get good at it. So try these exercises. As usual, you start it somewhere. Vos nos tangitis. Y'all touch us, whatever that means. And make it passive. So think about what it'll be a second before I put up the answer. Nos ab vobis, ablative, tangimini? No, tangimor. I never want to hear you say nos tangimini. You should know in your ear that that sounds awful. To hear a y'all and a we both doing the same action, oh no, that would be awful. So yeah, when you flip subject and object and you have a new subject, you might have to change to a different personal ending on that verb. Okay, so stop the video and try these, and I suggest you take a lot of time on this because this is the central task of this chapter. And then start it when you're ready to keep going. Okay, before we end this chapter, we have a little garbage collection to clean up here. First is this first semi-deponent that you have ever had, and you're getting it in this chapter. FIERÍ. This is the word to become. It's halfway in between facio, facere, to make, and facior, faci, to be made. Okay, and this is the weird way that it declines. So I'm sorry, this is just irregular. You just got to memorize it. Fio, fis, fit, fimus, fitus, fiunt. I become, or I occur, or I happen, you could even say. You become, he, she, it becomes, we become, y'all become, they become. Alrighty. And notice the macrons in those three places. So once again, fio, fis, fit, fimus, fitus, fiunt. All right, so recite it. So recite it the first time. Ready, go. Fio, fis, fit, fimus, fitus, fiunt. Good. And the translation is to become. Say it a second time, double fast. Ready, go. Fio, fis, fit, fimus, fitus, fiunt. And say it a third time. Ready, go. Fio, fis, fit, fimus, fitus, fiunt. And the translation become. And say it a final time, with just you, without me. Ready, go. Good. All right, so practice now. For the next several drills, you're going to use this vocab, so stop the video and recite these, and make sure you know the meanings as you recite them, and because you're going to use these in a second. So write the requested form using just one word. All right, so this is pretty straightforward and simple. You've done these before, so stop the video and start it again when you're ready to see the answers. And the answers? Alrighty then. Okay, for this next slide, remember when I ask you a question, you always have to respond with the opposite correlative person. So this shows where the correlatives are. I is correlative with you. We is correlative with y'all. And then third person is just you respond with the exact same thing. It's correlative with itself. All right. So if I ask you, are y'all something, you better respond, we are something, right? Yeah, you remember this. Okay, great. Remember also that on the left column, you want to confirm all whatever they expect the answer is going to be, whereas on the right column, you want to say the opposite of what they're expecting. So Noom is expecting a no. You'd better answer with a yes. No, ne, and ne are both expecting a yes, so you'd better answer with a no. Nice, right, okay. All right, so stop the video and start it when you're ready to see the answers. And the answers? All right, so they're not becoming, are they? Yes, they're becoming. Are they being thrown? Expecting a yes. No, they're not being thrown. And so on and so forth. Okay. Okay, the last concept for this chapter is an awesome, fun one. You're going to hate it, but then you'll love it in like a year. Deponents. Deponents sound awful. They are just like special backward verbs. They have passive form. So what endings would they have? Arvis, tur, murminientur, right? But active meaning. Whoa. So like loquor is I speak. Not I am spoken to. No, I speak actively. And the infinitive loqui is not to be spoken, but just straight old to speak. Oh, golly. All right, so this can be confusing to you. So we need to stop and slow down and compare deponents and normal verbs very carefully. All right, so here I have two verbs that are identical in meaning. They both mean I speak. Okay, so let's put out the two principal parts that we know. Loqui and dicere mean the same thing, and they mean to speak, okay? So there are actually one or two more principal parts, but we won't get those till chapter 21. So actually, I guess this is pretty easy right now. I misled you. Okay, so here are your deponents in chapter 16, except you've got two more now in chapter 17. And in 16, you only learned the third person endings. Now we're going to get them all because we just had them all. What are they? They're the same as the passive endings, right? Because deponent is a verb with passive form but active meaning. Okay. So let's take a look at these. Long A verbs are exactly what you would expect. Nothing unusual there. The long E verbs have FIERÍ as their infinitive. That's exactly what you learned for the passive infinitive. Nothing verbs are the ones that are hard because they are very unorthodox and spelled in weird ways. So here's the one area that you should concentrate on when you memorize. If you can get these, you'll probably get them all. And notice I underlined KISK in Profit KISS score because I've seen so many people misspell this. You won't misspell it if you remember KISK as being the central anchored syllable of that. Plector can have either of these prefixes, complector or omplector, means the same thing. Com kind of means like all around, whereas kind of means toward, but that's very minor. And then gredior, which means to go or more literally to like step, can have all kinds of prefixes. Progredior, I step forward. Regredior, I step back. Ingredior, I step into. Agredior, I have to step out of. So this is a whole tree of deponent verbs. Okay, down here in the long I verbs, operior is easily confused with operio with one P. So let's actually handle that right now. Back in stage like 7, you had reperio to find, and later on you had operio to cover or to hide, versus what we're getting now is operior with a double P. Okay, so how are we going to keep these straight so that when we see one, we don't confuse it with the other one and think that the wrong one means cover, for instance? Well, first, you should notice that these OPs are actually OBs. What happened was the B assimilated to the P after it and became a P also. But really, back in time, originally, this was a B. So where did this come from? All right. The two with a single P come from the verb pario, which means to give birth or bear to the light. So we have in English like ovoviviparous and parturition, I mean childbirth, or postpartum. Whereas this one with the double P is from a bland old vanilla word to experiment and experience, perior. So try to remember that if you have a single P, it's kind of like an A after it. That's one way that you can keep these straight, because A is such a dominant sound that you'll frequently have only a single P before it, because you're rushing through the P to get to the A. Whereas with an E, which is a much more finer sound, you're more likely to take your time and say both P sounds. So that's one way that you can associate the A root with a single P. The other and better way to remember it, though, is just remember that two P's is like getting stuck. It's taking too long, and so you need to wait for it to get through the whole word. So that's another little trick you can remember. So whatever floats your boat, I guess. And here are what the prefixes mean. Okay, so that's the word operi or operiri down here. Notice orior, to rise, like our word orient, which is the east, where the sun rises. Largior, like to bestow or grant, like our English word largesse, great largesse. And partior, to like part it apart. Okay, so try these. In the first blank, I want you to write what conjugation or what class of verbs the given Latin verb is. So revereris is a long E verb, so you can write that, long E. Then in the big blank, translate it. So give these a try, stop the video, and start it again when you're ready to see the answers. And the answers? Now try these, which are a little harder. This time you're going to actually write the Latin word, and this is more like what you'll be doing in the stories. So stop the video and start it again when you're ready to see the answers. And the answers? Okay, so let's see how well you kept track of what was going on. Here I've got some like meta grammar questions. And so stop the video and jot these down on a scrap sheet of paper and then start it again when you're ready to see if you got them all right. And the answers? And at this point, you have mastered all the passive endings, and you've probably got pretty good control now of our one semi-deponent, and you've got even more control over the deponents from chapter 16. So I'm sure you're ready to start the writing stories for this chapter, so good luck and see ya in chapter 18. Waleta!